Well, unfortunately, it's not a target. We've seen over the last several days, as all of his promises have fallen by the wayside, thought bubble after thought bubble. What Australians need is a clear plan with a clear set of targets and milestones over the course of the coming months that will give them confidence that they will be vaccinated, give Australian business confidence that they can plan their economic recovery with confidence. We haven't seen that. Apparently the modelling has been done by the government, but it's being kept secret, and Australians deserve to understand what that modelling says.
Well, another thing that the government spoke about potentially is CSL moving towards producing mRNA vaccines. Do you think that's achievable, and in what time frame?
Well, the government has spent millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on a business case handed over to private consultants. We want to see what that business case says. Greg Hunt has hastened very slowly on this, and because they've been so slow to act at a federal level, the Victorian government has had to step in, as we've seen time and time again in this pandemic. But having a local mRNA vaccine capability is critically important. That's what the Academy of Science and so many other experts have said. These cutting-edge vaccines are going to be very important, not only in dealing with the first phase of this pandemic, but we know the booster shots that are likely to be necessary to extend immunity, but also to deal with the variants that are racing around the world, are going to depend very heavily on mRNA vaccines.
Just in relation to the Australian Olympic team, to a lot of discussion last week about their being fast-tracked to get vaccines, and yesterday Mr Hunt seemed to indicate that was almost about to get the green light. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think all Australians are really keen to see the Australian Olympic team compete in Tokyo and do their absolute best. We need that at all times, particularly during a pandemic. So, look, we await some advice from the government about how they intend to ensure that the Australian team has the ability to do so, while also obviously being able to continue the vaccine rollout here in Australia. So when we get a briefing from the government about that, the detail of that, we'll be in a position to say something further.
But you'd be happy then, so to speak, jump the queue to get those vaccines to protect those young Australians?
Well, I think all Australians will want to see the Australian Olympic team compete in Tokyo if possible, and if that means being able to make sure that they and their staff are vaccinated, I'm sure Australians would support that. But again, we haven't seen any detail from the government about that yet, so we'll await that further detail.
The big shift in what you were saying a couple of weeks ago, what the ALP was saying a couple of weeks ago, that you didn't think they should be vaccinated, or jump the queue at least. What's caused that change in thinking?
Well, what we don't want to see is the focus taken off those most vulnerable Australians. We want to see a better vaccination rate than we've seen testified to the Senate committee yesterday for aged care residents and disability residents. But I'm sure with good planning we can make sure that we get better vaccination rates into those communities, while also vaccinating a relatively small number of Olympic athletes who've worked so hard over so many years to train and be ready for the Olympic Games. We need to see some detail from Greg Hunt about how he manages to achieve that balance, but if the advice is that we can do that, then Labor would support that.